it's a cliche, but it's true. Like it's never about how many times you get knocked back down. It's about what you do when you get back
MBA,
up. Man.
your college career is over with.
At that point, for me, I'm thinking if I stick out my MBA and finish it here, then I'm not making lower than probably like 65,000 at least for the rest of my life.
Whatever sport it is, putting it down and
Mhm.
stepping away from it, I think is a difficult transition.
It was devastating, dude. Because I mean, you put in all this work to put yourself in a position to even be good enough to get interest from these schools and to be able to perform on that level. And then when like the offers finally come in, think about it before the moment happens. Because if you just start kind of mapping out that plan and thinking about that one, like if you're reactive about that instead of proactive about it, then it's going to be a lot more stressful.
Welcome back to another episode of Back to Life. It's yours truly, Buckley on air. I'm here with a special guest, Randy Eccles. How you doing today?
I'm good, brother. How are you?
I'm doing good,
Happy to be
man. I
here.
I appreciate you for being willing to have a conversation with me.
Well, yeah, of
So,
course.
with for everybody that has been familiar or may not be familiar, each episode I talk to somebody that played a sport, both either collegiately or professionally, and I talk to them about the adjustment to life after sports. For Randy, you play basketball. First question I like to ask everybody with their respective sport: why basketball?
Well, basketball just ran really deep in my family. I, with my pops hooping too. I was probably one of those kids that just didn't have much of a choice. But I mean, I fell in love with it immediately. I had a ball in my hand since I was what 3 years old. So it was just basketball is just really deep in my family. My cousin played overseas. I played. My twin sister played in college too. Both my cousins played out west. Like big basketball family. So it was just going to be part of my upbringing in general.
Heard that. So for you, did you play any other sports while you were younger that you may have had a high love for?
I mean, I always like messed around with playing football, but I didn't get organized with it. Like I probably like trust me, a lot of people wanted me to play football, play like tight end or wide receiver or something, but it just once I started getting like good traction with basketball, the injury risk was like, nah, let's not do it. But then I did play soccer in middle school to kind of work on my footwork and things like that. And then I also did track and field for a little bit in middle school as well. But then once I got to high school, it was just straight basketball.
Fair enough. So was there a point in time where you fell in love with the game? Because everybody plays or may play, but they don't always fall in love with the game.
I mean, yeah, I would say for me, I fell in love with it pretty early just because, like, mind you, I was 5'9" by the time I was 11, 10 years old. You know what I'm saying? So, like, we just, when I started playing, I was initially one of those, like, super tall and coordinated kids. But then once like my height and my body started catching up to each other, and I was able to actually start putting it together on the court and like really making a difference, that's when I really started falling in love with it. Because once you get into a point with anything that you do where you start getting like good at it and you're able to excel at it, that's I think that's a lot of times when the love for anything starts, let alone something like basketball. So for me, that was when the love came around, was when this really all started clicking together and I wasn't just running around all uncoordinated and everything.
Gotcha. And you're right. Like you said, once that game starts to click and you're having fun and you can put the parts that you understand mentally with the physical part of it, it definitely goes. You mentioned that you have a twin sister, and you
Yeah.
said that she played college as well. What was that experience like having somebody that's right along with you through the whole process?
It was so dope to tell you the truth, bro. Like, because we actually played at the same school. We both played at Florida Tech, and at first that wasn't how it was supposed to play out, but we both ended up having like injury situations, and then just worked out where we both ended up at Florida Tech, and I wouldn't have had it any other way, just because like a with our schedules growing up in high school and middle school, like she was at this place and I was at this place and I was at this place and she was over here. So like we didn't always get to really even like see each other play for real, let alone even like just be around each other all the time because our schedules were always conflicting. So being able to like be at the same school, not just to be able to like be there for each other when we needed each other to check in, but then like also like their games were always right before ours. So like it was the first time really ever that I was able to actually like sit and really actually like watch her games like that for real and like really be there for her for that. And so like consistently. So it was I wouldn't have traded that experience for the world, man. Like just having, having her be there for my games, having me be there for hers, especially when like our parents were both back in the DMV and we was down in Florida. Like it was an awesome experience having her around for sure.
That's dope. That's really dope.
Yeah, bro.
So you just said you're from the DMV,
Yes, sir.
and for people that are familiar with basketball, they know that the DMV is a hoop bed. A lot of players
Absolutely.
come from that area. So for
Absolutely.
you, when you were there at the time, especially in high school, what players were in the area, and what players did you have the opportunity to play against?
I mean, shoot, so many. Travion Graham was my teammate in AAU. He played at VCU. Ended up going over, getting drafted, and then went overseas. I had shoot. We played against DeMatha, and their whole starting lineup was Quinn Cook at the one, Jerry Grant at the two, Jeremy Grant at the three, Victor Oladipo at the four. Like they were just absolutely fucking loaded, amongst like plenty of other guys that were just solid as hell too. So I mean, plenty of those guys. Marcus Thornton was a teammate of mine. He got drafted by the Celtics and went overseas. Shoot, there's a whole bunch. I mean, I played for the same AAU team that Mike Beasley did and got to work out with him when he was about to come out at K State. Rodney Magruder played with DC Assault as well. Um, I mean, just look like go down the list, dude. Like there were so like that, like you said, the DMV is such a hotbed for basketball. Like there's so many good players out there. So it was just a lot. It was like any given time we were in the gym, you were potentially in there with somebody that either was going to go pro or went pro in some capacity or whatever the case. I mean, shoot, on the younger DC Assault team, there was Nate Britt and Chris Jenkins that played at Villanova. Like, just, I mean, I could go down the list, dude. There were so many dudes that we played with and against in that area. So it was a lot.
And I mean, I follow hoops, so I know every person that you said. And if for the people that are watching, hopefully you guys go do your research on those particular people. But it that goes to show like 1 degree of separation when it comes down to a lot of different
Facts.
things. For you, I think ultimately a lot of people's ultimate goal would be, especially if you're playing a sport, to play at the professional level, play at the NBA. What was that experience like for you being in high school and then being around so many guys that were on the doorstep of the NBA or were in the NBA?
I mean, I mean, we all lace up the same way and we all were motivated to get better and get to our dream. You know what I mean? So, especially in high school, when you're playing in those like high level AAU circuits and then going back to your school team and playing against, all the same guys. Like our league was the WCAC, which I don't know if it's still the case, but at the time, best high school conference in the country. And just being around that much competitiveness and that many high level athletes that are all working towards the same thing, like it was motivating, like I mean, shoot, especially when you start getting those D1 letters and offers rolling in and you're hearing this person's committing over here and this person's doing this person's doing that, just being in that environment to like know that you are around high enough level talent where if the right person sees you, you're gonna get that shot. You know what I mean? Like, so it was just growing up in that environment was great. Like, I wouldn't have traded playing ball in the DMV for anything.
So, last thing in reference to the DMV.
Yeah.
DMV stands for DC, Maryland, Virginia.
Yes, sir.
Which particular one of those three were you from? And then can you speak? I've heard other people speak on that. There's a level of divide. Like some people claim DMV, some people are like, I'm from this area, I'm
Ah,
from this area. Can you speak on
yes,
that as well?
for sure, absolutely. So, I mean, so to answer your first question, I was born in DC, at Washington Hospital for Women, and then was raised in PG County, Maryland, out in Bowie. And so, in terms of that degree of separation that you're talking about, like like it's kind of confused because there's like parts of Maryland and parts of Virginia that are like so far out that they're not quite close enough to like DC to be considered a part of that. Like the rule of thumb that I always go by, or what I went by whenever I was there, was if the metro didn't touch it, it wasn't a part of the DMV, right? And so, like, if you think about places like Baltimore, they got their whole. I don't know if you've ever heard somebody from Baltimore talk. They got their whole own accent. They got their own swag. Like they got their whole like people from Baltimore they won't claim the DMV because it's a whole different thing. Like Baltimore and the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia, totally different. And then like if you're talking about being like from Virginia, for example, and then you're from like Hampton or Richmond or something like that, where you're like hours away from DC. Like it's still Virginia, obviously, but like that's not technically considered the DMV. And then like in Maryland, if you're in like PG County or somewhere that's like way closer to DC, that's really more considered the DMV versus like what you would consider what's called like Super Maryland, where it's like 2 hours out the way. You know what I mean? And so it is a little confusing, but the main rule of thumb is like if it's reachable by metro, which is the train, then that's what you would consider the metropolitan DC area, DC, Maryland, Virginia area. So it's really that. It's complex for sure. It's interesting, but it's we rep it hard for sure.
I feel that. I love it. I love the even the breakdown. Again, for me, it's just like you learn something new every day.
For sure, for sure. And I'm sure that there's people that could break it down even further than that. Cause like I mean, I've lived in Florida since tech like officially 2018 now. So I've been a little bit out. So but I still go back home, obviously visit my people and stuff like that. But like, there's even people now that, will probably be able to break because like they're adding metro lines and stuff. So there's probably a extra branch to it or something I'm not even hip to. So yeah,
I I
man.
got you. So you played in high school. You
Yeah.
played for DC Assault AAU team, which you said had a number of different people come in before you
Mhm.
and after you. What was your high school experience like playing basketball?
Um, it was it was dope, but it was kind of interesting because I got hurt quite a bit, like during the most major times of recruiting. Like, I'm sure you know this, but like going into like sophomore year, junior year, those are like the years when it's like, all right, if they're gonna give you an offer, like they're throwing it at you now. They want to see, they've brought you to their camp, they've seen what you can do, blah blah blah, whatever. They want to see what you do out there with your high school team blah blah blah. So for me, like the beginning of my high school experience was interesting because I played varsity all 4 years. I started off at a school called St. John's, and then me and the coach, not that we like didn't get along, we got along fine, but I was 6'3" and a half, 165 soaking wet, but I could jump and block shots. So he was like playing me at the center, and I'm over here with my pops, and we're like, we know he's not going to be a center growing up. Like that's the way basketball is going, the way things are moving. Like he's not going to be in the post. So we disagreed on that level. So I ended up transferring to school called Good Counsel out there in Olney, Maryland. That's where I was with my guys, Rod, Dev, Mel, Ben, all them. So uh, it was really good playing with them. But then after my sophomore year, going into my junior year, we were actually like voted preseason to win the WCAC, but then I ended up cracking my ankle, twisted it really bad in the first day of practice, and then little like a month afterwards ended up cracking it completely. So that whole entire year was a wash for me. And then once I kind of came back, got my health back under me in the summer, and then came back for senior year to try to relishing on any scholarship opportunities I had left. I went and tore my meniscus that preseason, and then That was pretty much it. That was the whole reason why I even ended up at Florida Tech is because all the D1s that I had, they ended up pulling them because I got hurt. And so like my high school experience was good. Like, I was still able to, play, make my name, do AAU, all that was cool. But then like I missed a lot of chunks. Like the ankle I cracked, that had me out for 6 months. Torn meniscus had me out for the first half of my senior season. So it was like, you know, in the times where I really needed to be available for coaches to see me and everything, I was hurt and I wasn't there. And so that kind of led into me having to, find somewhere to walk on. And then, from there, I was able to actually really get healthy and then really get out on the court and hoop and do my thing. So it worked out after the fact. And, I done got my MBA from Florida Tech. I'm top five all time 3-point percentage over there. So, like, although there's always the look back of what could have been if I didn't get hurt in high school and playing there. But like, it ended up leading to stuff that I'll never regret being a part of with my college experience. So it all worked out.
And I'm glad that you view it in that way, like it all worked out, because for some people that they have the woe is me mentality when they deal with a lot of hardships and etc. For you though, you did say that you did have an interest in D1 offers at that time. For you,
Mhm.
what was that experience like of seeing these schools they said they're interested in you, or even have given you an offer, and then you get hurt, and then they're pulling these offers from you?
It was devastating, dude. Because I mean, you put in all this work to put yourself in a position to even be good enough to get interest from these schools and to be able to perform on that level. And then when like the offers finally come in, and you're like, all right, this is great. Then you know something outside of your control happens and it all gets taken away. It just goes to show, like that kind of opened my eyes up to the business side of college athletics because it was like, on the one hand, you're like, well, they know what I can do. Like, why would they take my scholarship? Why would they take this if they knew that what I was bringing to the table? But then you think about it and they're like, all right, well, they're investing this in you. And if they got somebody that could do something similar to you that was next in line that's healthy, that scholar's going to the next person. You know what I mean? So it was very difficult to deal with at the time, especially because it happened back to back. And it was just like, it was just one of those things where it was like, again, you think about the what ifs and like, oh, if this didn't happen, if that didn't happen. But then, ultimately, you use it as your own motivation to tell to make your own comeback story. At the end of the day, it's a cliche, but it's true. Like, it's never about how many times you get knocked back down. It's about what you do when you get back up. And, I wasn't going to let my situation define what I was or wasn't as a basketball player. And then, like I said, I came back from it well and was able to make my name after I recovered. So it all worked out.
Got you. When it was time to make a decision, or it was time to try and go to college, what went into your decision to choose Florida Tech? Because I could imagine that if you went to Florida Tech, there were other schools or other opportunities for you to choose
Sure.
from.
Absolutely. I mean, when I knew I was going to have to like walk on initially, I'm thinking to myself, like, all right, I could just, walk on to any good basketball program, and try to go that way, whatever. But then I was like, let me go somewhere where I'll know I'll be able to play right away after, recovering from an injury. B, I wanted to go to a good basketball school, which Florida Tech is a very good basketball school. And then on top of that, since I'm walking on, I wanted to go somewhere that was good educationally. And Florida Tech educationally is one of the best schools in the country from that standpoint. From a black graduation standpoint, I think I just read something the other day that like 77% of the African Americans that go to that school have graduated. So, like, just taking a bunch of different things into account that, like, I necessarily might not have so much if it was like, all right, here's a scholarship to go play here. You know what I'm saying? So
Mm.
so it was really being able to give myself the chance to be able to come because like if I go to a big D1, like yeah, I probably could have did the same thing, but at the same time, like if you think the politics are crazy at the D2 level, the D1 level is absolutely insane. So it's like, would I have really had the best shot of being able to give myself an opportunity to prove myself by going that route, or do I, go the D2 route, go to a good D2 school, get myself a good education, and on top of that, be able to give myself the opportunity to play. Like that was really the main thing that went into me wanting to go to Florida Tech. And then when I was reaching out to them, like I told you, like my sis at the time, she was kind of going through the same thing with her situation because she got hurt as well. And then she went to a tryout that their girls team had, and I wasn't there because I was on the other side doing my thing too. But like, I don't know what she did in that trial, but they gave her a full scholarship on the spot, and so that's how she ended up coming over to Florida Tech too. Is we both ended up, going. Like for me, I was still recovering from injury, so I was more so proving myself enough to be able to like make the team, and then from there, I knew I'd be able to prove myself. But then for her, like I said, I didn't see it because I was on the other court, but from what I heard, she was burning them, so she got a full scholarship on the spot, and then it worked out from there.
That's dope to see that both of y'all took advantage of opportunities even after injuries and were able to make the most of the situation and go to Florida Tech.
For sure, man, for sure. Like I said,
So
I wouldn't have had it any other way. Having my sister there for it and everything, so
it's dope. No, it truly is dope. So
yeah.
for you, you go to Florida Tech
Mm-hmm.
and you said you finished top five in 3 point field goal percentage, which to me sounds like you got the opportunity to play and you
Yeah.
played well.
Yeah.
Through that whole process, what was your college experience like and actually being on the court? And did you ever consider transferring once you got there?
Hilarious question, but yeah. So, um, hmm, how do I say this without outing anybody? Okay, I give it to you. So yeah, first part of that question. I mean, my experience was awesome. It started like I said with me walking on there, but then as I got there, I knew what kind of talent I was, and but then I very much was open my eyes to the fact that like D2 isn't just like a whole level lower than D1. Like the only real difference is facilities, access to facilities, and finances. Like other than that, like you're talking about the skill level, like it is some killers on the D2 level, boy. Let me tell you what, I learned that very, very quickly. But so, coming in there my freshman year, we had like seven seniors on the team or something like that. So I knew I was still kind of coming back from my injury too. So I knew that year I wasn't going to be able to really make my case on the court. But like, every day in practice, we do our little scrimmages and, obviously like white team versus starters, whatever the case. And I always use that as my opportunity to show them like, listen, I could play with anybody out here. And our team won the league my freshman year. So I'm going, I'm dropping 30 on dudes in practice and then, going out there. But then, sophomore year comes around, I end up actually getting the opportunity to play for one of my teammates that got hurt. And then not only did I go in there and play, but like I said, like you said, I did well and went from being, maybe a, 10-minute off the bench type of guy, a little energy here and there, whatever, to by the end of the season, I was, six man, 30 minutes a game, like solid part of the rotation, all that stuff, right? And so the question you asked about what I consider, if I ever considered transferring, after my sophomore year, I went to my coach and pretty much asked him, like, hey, look, like you told me if I came to this program, if I was top nine in minutes played, top nine in a rotation, that I would be on scholarship, no questions asked. And it's the end of the year, and I'm top six. So, like, what are we talking about? And he basically said to me that because we missed the NCAA tournament by one game, that he had to do his recruiting prior to being able to offer me anything as a walk on, even though I was a big part of the success that we had going like in that year. We started my sophomore year, we started the year 1-7. And then the dude that I took his minutes for that got injured went down. I stepped in, and then we got another transfer named Terrence Tubb. We came in and didn't lose a game the rest of the season. And I'm
Why did
not
y'all
sitting
miss
here.
the tournament?
We missed about one game, dude. If we would have won one game in our conference tournament, we would have won enough to qualify. But we missed it by we lost our first game in the conference tournament, and that's what took us off the cuff. So So literally, if we would have won that one game, we would have, bid our would have been able to get a bid in the tournament. And then from that point, I don't know. I guess coach would have felt like he could have gave me the scholarship right then and there instead of waiting. But anyway, so to answer your question, when I was thinking to myself, like, man, yeah, he even told me like, we'd hate to see you go, but like if you end up transferring because of this, like I'd understand and I'll do anything I can to help you if you need it, if that's a decision you make. And I'm sitting there like, so you gonna let me walk? Like no, like knowing what I just did and what I produced, you're sitting there. So that was a moment when I really, really was sitting there like, nah, let me take my talent somewhere where they'll actually appreciate it. But I ended up sticking it out because that summer I knew I was gonna be, playing going back home to the DMV to train with all my guys, and I was for the first time in a long time feeling like I was really back in shape. So I knew I was going to be coming back in that next season killing. So I was like, you know what? Like, he's not going to get all his recruiting that he wants to get done. So I'll just, meet with him in the preseason, see what's there. Boom. And then broke my foot that off season. and,
Okay.
and so then I ended up having a red shirt. Didn't get the Scully that season. But then, funny enough, the season I missed, we were, expected to do like A, B, C, and D, and then really underperformed that year. Even though on paper we had a team to like really make a good push, and the things that we were really bad at that season were free throw shooting, 3-point shooting, defense, and rebounding, and those were all things that I brought to the field. And so after the fact, we're like mid season, and he finally came up to me and was like, "Hey, man, like I see what we were missing with not having you out here," and then he finally gave me a scholarship. The year I was hurt, he gave me a scholarship, which was crazy, but that ended up working out. And then, like I said, the redshirt junior season came in, had a couple of career highs, and then my senior season was where I shot. Single season, I think I finished at 40. I think I finished almost at 45% from three, I'm pretty sure.
Alrighty.
And then on my career, I was like 42 or something like that. And I'm in the top 10 and the top five in a lot of different categories, 3-point percentage wise. So like it ended up working out. Like I said, it's one of those things where like if I, was like, oh, forget this, let me go somewhere else. Like who knows if that opportunity ever ends up coming up. You know what I'm saying? So like it just, you know, speaks to the perseverance of it.
So with that, like you said, you got the scholarship, which again, that whole situation, I think that also is a testament to one, your hard work, but also like people don't realize, people that like look at college sports, they don't realize the like it's when it comes down to the scholarships, it's percentages and different things of that nature, and so everybody that you see on these teams may not be on scholarship.
That's a fact. That's a fact, dude. Like I was literally just, and the other thing that people don't understand, like especially these young kids coming up, like there's more than one way to skin the cat. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody thinks that you gotta get your scholarship like right then and there and then. But like I was just talking to a kid that lives in my complex the other day that, he's trying to do some post grad situation. I'm like, listen, just because you didn't get a scholarship right now, like doesn't mean you can't go and prove yourself to somebody, bro. Like, and then just because it's not D1, if your ultimate goal, because like mind you, the NBA, as much as that's a dream for a lot of us, it's like that's probably the toughest league ever to get into, sports wise. That's outside of like I don't know, maybe F1 or something, but like outside of like that, if you're talking like sports, like there's only been however many basketball NBA players ever compared to how many worldwide people play the sport. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? So it's like, like if you think D1 is like a lock for you, bro, like it's not that. Like there's guys that should be pro in D1 that aren't for whatever reason or another. So it's like you just gotta get it how you gotta get it. You know what I mean? If there's an opportunity for you to be able to do it this way instead of that way, just because it's not the super high D1 level way doesn't mean that there's not a way to be. Like there's a lot. I mean, shoot, there's guys in the league that started off at a JUCO or at a D2 or something, and then made their way like that. So there's a lot of different ways to do it.
And that's essentially the point in this whole conversation, as well as with what you were just saying. The thing that I'm curious about is that you said you had the redshirt junior year, and you did say that you got your MBA from Florida Tech.
Yeah,
Did
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
do did you do like a grad year as
I
well?
did, I did. So the way it worked, because I had the red shirt, right? And
Okay.
so I finished academically before I finished on the court, if that makes sense. Like I graduated undergrad before my eligibility on the court was done. So the first half of my um, MBA, I was a player still. So I played through the first half of getting my MBA, and then in the second half of getting my MBA, I was a graduate assistant. And
Mm.
so I was a graduate assistant coach for Florida Tech for the last half of me getting my MBA, and then that's how I finished it out, and I went from there.
Okay, so I'm familiar with grad assistant, GA.
Yep.
Um,
Hmm. Yep.
the thing and the reason why I asked that is because in my head I'm thinking you played the 4 years there, you balled out your senior year. Why
Hmm.
didn't you try to do a grad year at like a D1? Because I imagine you played well enough to have that opportunity. But
Yeah. Well, the thing was is that so I when I got when I broke my foot, we thought that was going to be a couple months recovery situation, and ended up taking me out the whole season. And so a lot of that time, I was spending recovering, getting back. But then when I the way my schooling situation worked out is it was like I was it wouldn't have made sense because like the junior year I had, like although I had a good junior year, I wasn't putting up numbers good enough to be like, hey, D1, come pick me up. You know what I'm saying? And then my senior year is really when I went crazy. So like by the time I actually finished that year, my eligibility was done.
okay,
So like it was I did year one, year two, got hurt. Year three, graduated undergrad, started grad school, year four, boom, boom. So like it was like I wouldn't have had the opportunity to go and transfer anywhere else after my last season at Florida Tech was done. So,
fair enough.
but
So you finish, you get your MBA,
mhm.
your college career is over with. At that point, did you go play overseas, or was basketball done for you at that stage?
So I had opportunities to go play overseas, but the opportunities that I had were like, and in hindsight, there's a part of me that wishes I would have done them. But there was like, like oh, there was a 3-month contract in Argentina that they wanted me to go to, and then there was a situation in Ireland where they wanted to have me play out there, and then pay for me to get an MBA out in Ireland or something like that. It was a weird situation, but it was one of those things where like me weighing out the pros and cons of going overseas with an unfinished degree in my master's and then coming back like whenever basketball was done, and then would have having to have done more school again, paid for it, and then figure life out from there after the fact. Because a lot of athletes, what happens with them is they'll go, they'll finish their basketball or whatever, but they may not have graduated or whatever the case is. They'll go overseas, come back with an unfinished degree, and then now they either got to go back to school or find a trade or something or do something that you know what I mean. Whereas like at that point for me, I'm thinking if I stick out my MBA and finish it here, then I'm not making lower than probably like 65,000 at least for the rest of my life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Versus if I go overseas, not to say I wouldn't have been successful and wouldn't have been able to do this and the third, but like with my injury history, I'm also thinking, what if I go over there and get hurt? And then it's like it's an injury that I can't come back from because I've already had 3 or 4 major ones. And now what? You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Yeah.
So now at that point, it's like, do I want to be in that position and then have to go back to school, pay for it, and then figure things out from there? Or do I just take this free degree that I have, finish coaching, finish doing my MBA like that, and then figure things out after the fact? And it sucked because like you go your whole life working for that opportunity to get an overseas option, and then it finally hits, and then you realize that like at least in my case, it just wasn't the right thing to do, which it sucked. Like that was like that decision like to finally like put basketball down for good. Like you can ask any athlete. That's it's the worst feeling in the world, man, because it's all you've known your entire life. It's all you've known, right? And
Right.
so you know it stings initially, but then at the end of the day, those basketball opened up a lot of doors for me. You know what I mean? Like it opened up my ability to get my MBA, which has now put me in a position where now I'm in medical device sales. You know what I mean? And it's like that's not a lot of like that's a great career option for somebody that came out of being an athlete. You know what I mean? So there's something that I always was taught growing up was to use basketball to get where you want to go in life and not ever to let it use you. And a lot of times, a lot of athletes get up, just caught up in the dream of just trying to, D1 pro, this, that, whatever, versus like use basketball to get you to a spot where you can then take advantage of something. And like, mind you, if basketball is meant for you, I mean, hey, look, go get it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, it's meant for a lot of people. Shoot, I mean, I felt like it was meant for me until I got hurt. But then, like, at the end of the day, it's not like all is lost once the ball stops bouncing or the ball starts dribbling or rolling, whatever the case, right? Like you could, and then after ball, like we still playing a bunch of leagues. We can still keep our game sharp just to do what we got to do to fulfill our love for the game in general. But you could just use it to get to other avenues in life and open up other doors. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. So with you in particular, because this is interesting,
yeah.
and you said you went and you became a GA, graduate assistant.
Mhm.
You decided not to play basketball anymore, but you were still close to the game by being a coaching assistant.
Absolutely.
Why not go into coaching? Like what? Maybe not deterred you, but what made you go? Okay, I don't want to be a coach.
To be completely honest with you, that's something that I'm still like open to. Like I'm not completely closed to getting back into that because I did do after I retired and like once I started working, I did do like individual skills training for a little while. But to be honest with you, like I probably should have parlayed coaching at the grad school level into getting like a coaching job somewhere or doing something like that. But the way my mind was working at the time, I'm thinking, I got my undergrad in clinical psychology. I got my master's degree in business. I was really trying to, at the time, what I really wanted to do was open up my own sports psychology practice. That was something that I really was like thinking about. But then after looking at like the road to I would have had to take to get there versus like kind of the options I had in front of me. That was really the reason why I didn't. And not to say that that wasn't the right decision. I mean, shoot, I think about it all the time that maybe I should have, or maybe I could have went and did that. But like, it's not something I'm closed off to either. Like, I still have a lot of connections in the basketball community where if I wanted to jump into a coaching gig tomorrow, I probably could. But now that we are actually working and we are doing our own thing in that facility, it's the time isn't always there. Like when I first came out of college, I was actually working at Enterprise for a while. That's how I met Duran. And anybody that knows anything about the work life balance and Enterprise, like you learn of a lot of invaluable experience in terms of how to run your own business, how to become a manager, all those things. But if you're talking about like having time outside of work, it was a wrap for that. So like, especially once I started doing that, I really didn't even like. Not to say I didn't have the time. I just legitimately didn't. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
it was just one of them things. So, and then now that I'm in medical device sales, I'm a year and some change into that, and I'm just trying to do my best to work my way and become successful in this atmosphere. So
I get it. I definitely get it. And the reason why I asked you that is because I'm familiar with the GA. Like when I was in college, I was a team manager, and so I worked
yeah.
with the GAs and stuff. And so for me, I realized I was like, I wish I would have done that because
Hmm.
I considered the idea of coaching because I started to deal with kids and different things like that, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I realized that although I wasn't talented, I didn't put in enough work to put myself in position to even play at the next level. but I still understood the game
Yeah,
and I have the knowledge, and I'm like, I should have given that a try. If I didn't like it, that's one thing, but it's another
sure.
thing to never try and do it at all.
Hmm. For sure. For
So
sure, man.
for you, and I think just with anybody, like you said, putting the ball down, whatever sport it is, putting it down and
Uh,
stepping away from it, I think is a difficult transition for you. How easy or difficult was that transition for you? And on top of that, having a twin sister who played the sport, and it sounds like you have family that played sports, how did they help you navigate through not being an athlete anymore?
it was. I mean, the difficulty in that decision wasn't necessarily because for me, I kind of already had my plan in motion by the time I made that decision. But it was one of those things where, like, because for me, the overseas interest didn't really start hitting until like midway through my killer senior year, right? And so, but by then I already had the grad school thing. Like I had already had that discussion with my coach where it was like, all right, after I'm, done with my eligibility to finish my master's, I'll do this. Like that was already rolling. So the transition was more like it sucked from the standpoint of when the opportunity to go overseas came back after the fact and then I had to decline it. That was more for me the tougher part because it was like, something where after all the injuries and everything, I just kind of figured like, hey, maybe this isn't something that's going to happen. And then it did. And then it was like, fuck, well, I already put something else together now. So that, for what it's worth at the time, was just a better option for me to pursue. So it was a situation where it was like, it sucked. But then, like, when you got your, especially like I said, like with my sister, having her there, that helped out. And then, like, basketball transitioning for her was easy. She knew. I mean, in women's sports, the WNBA at the D2 level is not really a thing, right? So,
Right.
like for her, she kind of knew like well before basketball was over that the college was as high as she was trying to go with it. So she was really just like playing, but then like focusing on books and everything. So for her, transition wasn't too difficult. But then like on my side, I guess I would say transitioning was it was like flipping your mindset, you know what I mean? To being like, all right, this whole time I've been thinking like, all right, what do I gotta do to get to the next level of hoops? What I gotta do to get to the next level of hoops? What I gotta do to get to the next level of hoops? And now you're thinking like, all right, for the first time in your life, you're thinking more like, all right, what do I gotta do to get to the next level of my career? And like what level I gotta do to get to myself professionally. And you're thinking outside the athletic box. And that was a transition that thankfully I had a very good support system, with mentors, with advisors. Obviously my parents helped out a lot in that, and just being able to guide me in that way of like, all right, look, if athletics isn't what we're going to do, you already got this emotion, so this is where you can try to go with it depending on what you want to do with yourself and blah blah blah. So it was just really just flipping the mindset, man, like just flipping the mentality of like, all right, like what I got to do to get to this opportunity, get the opportunity to try to go this. Now we're thinking like, all right, cool. What doors have I been able to open using this to get myself here? So now I can go and do this, and this. Now that this is the space that I'm in, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think in general, a lot of athletes, it's kind of two recurring themes with this idea, but I think it's still very important that it's continued to be reiterated. Having a support system, a good support system,
Absolutely.
and having a plan. Because
Yeah.
I've talked to plenty of athletes. They don't have a plan.
Yeah.
They're done and they're like, oh snap! Like you wake up the next day and you're like, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. What do I do with myself? So have a
Absolutely.
plan, have that good support system.
Mhm.
To wrap up, I got two last questions for you.
Talk to me. Yeah, man.
First one, like I said, you had the luxury of being around a lot of talented athletes that
Hmm.
played at the next level in terms of college as well as playing at the NBA level. What advice
Hmm.
would you give somebody that's in high school that's trying to get to that college level?
What I always, what I found for myself, and then what I always tell kids is find something that you can be better than everybody else at. You know what I mean? Like, especially if, like, for example, if you're not the best shooter, Okay, cool, but you're the best defender on the team. There's always going to be a spot on the team for somebody that can play lockdown defense. If, like in my case, once I got hurt and stuff, like I wasn't quite as athletic or whatever off the dribble, things like that, but I was an absolute sniper. I was like, regardless, I don't care where you at on this team, who better than me, worse than me, whatever. Nobody's going to be able to shoot this ball like I can. And then that's how I was able to get my way in. So, like, I always tell people, hey, you gotta outwork the next person for one, but then on top of that, just find something that you do better than everybody and absolutely excel at that. Whether it's shooting, whether it's basketball IQ, whether it's leadership, whatever the case is, find that niche that you have within your sport that you are better at than everybody, and then you just shine in what you shine in. You know what I mean? And then there will be an opportunity for you somewhere. You know what I'm
I love it. I
saying?
needed that advice when I was in high school.
Yeah, bro. Like that's literally it. Because everybody thinks like, oh, I got to be the jump the highest, run the fastest, got to dunk on people, got to do this, do that, and it's like, yeah, all those things obviously help. But then like, if you're able to carve your niche out and be like, all right, well, I'm not the best this, or this. Like, look at Josh Hart for example. Is he the best at anything?
He great at
No,
defense. That's the
but
one
he's
thing.
an amazing defender, and he's going to put his heart out there and play harder than anybody. And that's how you get like Pat Bev, guys like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a way to make your crowd. You can make your way in for yourself for sure. You just got to find that thing that you do better than everybody, and then obviously just outwork everybody too. Because Kevin Durant saying, "Man, hard work beats talent. Anytime talent don't work hard, and just off of outworking the next person, you can get a spot over them." So,
That's for sure. Like I was told in high school, know your role, and at the time it was probably I felt like the biggest insult. And now that I'm older, I'm like, if I knew what that meant, then
yeah, yep,
I would
that's
have been
exactly
in
that's
I would have
exactly
been
what.
in a
Yep.
completely different. I would have played.
Yeah.
Like I was on the team, but I didn't play, and it's because of things like that. And I thought
Hmm.
more of myself than what the reality of where I was at.
Hmm. Yeah, you gotta look at the situation, like especially like for you, right? Like in a situation where you probably were going in like, all right, well, I don't know what I can do, better than this person or the next person or whatever, or whatever. But like, if you're like a great energy guy, you come in and just fucking outwork everybody. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you are a great pick and pop person, and that's all you do. If you are the best on the team at pick and pop, then trust me, when there's a situation where a pick and pop is needed, your number's getting called. You know what I'm saying? Like, so
Yeah,
it is exactly right. Know your role means be the best at what you're the best at. You know what I'm saying? And nobody's gonna be able to take that from you for
for
sure.
sure. Last question. Every athlete deals with it, that adjustment to life after sports.
Yep.
What advice would you give somebody trying to adjust back to life?
Um, think about it before the moment happens, because if you just start kind of mapping out that plan and thinking about that one, like if you're reactive about that instead of proactive about it, then it's going to be a lot more stressful. You know what I'm saying? Like if for like you said, a lot of times guys go overseas, go play ball, do whatever, and then come back, and now they're like, okay, now what? Versus like for example, one of my guys who's over in Germany right now, my man Chris Carter, he for the past like year. Like he's not, he's still probably got another 2, 3 years in him, but he's been hitting me up asking like, hey, look, like after ball, like what should I get? Like I'm thinking of trying to get into this field and this field, and who should I be reaching out to? What should I do? Like, you know what I mean? So, like, think about what your plan after basketball or after sports is before that moment comes, because then when that moment comes, you're not sitting there like, oh, what do I do now? You're thinking like, all right, cool. Like we've been working towards this. All right, I knew that it was ramping down. So now that I'm done, like I'm already gonna have my LLC ready. Blah blah blah. Whatever. Like you know what I mean. Whatever it is, in whatever aspect, like just make sure you start thinking about that plan prior to that moment coming. That's what
I
I would
love
say.
it. I love
Yeah.
it. I love it. I love it. I appreciate you, Randy, so much,
Yeah,
man.
bro. No, I appreciate you having me, man. My bad for the other day, dog. Like I
Nah, you
said, I don't
good,
know.
man.
No, if you can still hear it, I'm still a little congested, but nah, it was an honor to come on and talk to you, man. And obviously, we've been talking through like the group chats and stuff, so now like finally getting the face of the name, man. And it's cool to finally meet you, bro.
No doubt, man.
Man, man.
Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.